So I recently saw a video about how Gen Z has pretty much rejected street culture.
Gen Z has broken the street culture curse, and they need credit. When it's time to dogpile on people, we gonna do that. But when it's time to congratulate, we need to be just as loud. There are significantly less gang members in Gen Z. Significantly less street dudes. And I'm proud of y'all for that. I really am. Because we needed a generation to completely reject that entire way of thought. Because doing the opposite has broken families and created generational traumas for everybody involved. Gen Z is the generation that across the board has decided it doesn't even make sense to sacrifice your life for people who tell you that your life is worth nothing. Young Thug told Gunna, if we go to jail and do life, we just do life. And then we try to figure out how to get out. What sense does that make? None. That's what sense it makes.
If we go to prison for the rest of our life, whoop-de-doo. We go to prison.
Everybody y'all made fun of right now that was nerds in school is making that guap. Got skill sets out the ass, and that's what people love. The f you can offer. You over here fighting and dying over hoods that you don't even f own. But a young player like myself gonna pull up to that buy the real estate up, you feel me?
I'm so glad that we are witnessing, little by little, city by city, kids are seeing how stupid this street is. Kids are seeing how pointless glorifying this bullshit is because the niggas who promote it don't even follow the rules that they try to apply on others. It's a destructive, degenerate mindset. You have grown men damn near or well into their 30s. Some of them are approaching their 40s, still trying to play street politics. Go raise your kids.
Now, if you are from a place that's similar to mine, the first thing you'll probably think when you hear this is, this can't be true. If you don't know, I am originally from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, a place that definitely a lot of the youth subscribes to the street culture. If you don't believe me, look at like the Taboo Room Aaron's video where he took a tour of Baton Rouge.
One of my ops gave it like the guy, and he no longer wants to be in the street. If he want to walk down the street, we gonna send him the guy. Right? Straight to the guy. Mama, we gonna send him right where he want to be.
But to be completely honest with you, through all my years growing up, that's mostly what I saw kids looking up to and mostly what I saw them subscribing to as like what they thought was cool. And during my childhood, I never thought that these things were cool. And I always had very different interests from the people around me, which led them to make fun of me a lot. I won't cap, at times it did make me want to portray myself kind of differently, but I never would say I just outright portray myself as somebody who's super about it. But honestly, during those times, I really thought I was like one of the last people left. I thought I was like the only guy who thought that way. And I don't think it really changed how I started to really find my tribe, and I realized, oh, I'm not the only person who thinks this way. And there are people who will accept me for me. But I kind of had this view on the entire world that the majority of people thought like that, and there were very few who thought like me. During my senior year of high school, I got a scholarship offer to wrestle at a college in Missouri. So I went on a college visit there, got to see the culture of the college and the culture of the city. It was in Kansas City, Missouri. And the first thing I noticed was the people there and how different they were. I remember me and my mom going to the mall, and I pointed out to her how like nobody was sagging. None of the kids there looked like they were just up to no good. Now, not to judge people by their outward appearance, but if you were to go to the mall, Louisiana, you'll undeniably see a bunch of people sagging and a bunch of questionable looking people there. But when I went to Missouri, it was just like a culture shock for me. And it really took that for me to realize that, oh wait, the whole world's not like this. Another place where I saw how things were really different is when I went to New York. And that was one of my favorite parts about it, just the vibe of it. And the thought of like, you could really be whoever you want and nobody will bat an eye. Which is just something that's not a reality here. Now, obviously, in theory, you could be whoever you want, but undeniably, that will probably come with a lot of backlash. People will look at you like, why are you wearing that? Why is your hair like that? Even something like tattoos or something. You have a lot higher likelihood of getting judged down here than you ever would being somewhere else. And that really brings me to the first reason why I think Gen Z has like rejected street culture. And that's because it ultimately puts you in a box. Living your life in a box is not a good thing. I'm not saying acting a certain way or being a certain way is, but having the ideology that this is the only way life goes will not get you very far in life. Not even in the street culture way. I had to learn that even in the career I'm pursuing. One of the biggest inspirations to me when I started pursuing the medical field is seeing people who look like me, but not even look like me, but looked like what I wanted to be. I remember seeing doctors with dreads. I saw doctors with tattoos. I saw respiratory therapists with all of these things, nurses. The list goes on and on. But seeing somebody in a position that I wanted to be and still being authentic to themselves was a really big motivator for me. I think where I'm from, a lot of the time we're given this idea that we have to fit some kind of cookie cutter template. The template that I like to call the good boy template. You have to have a one fade all around, no tattoos, you have to dress a certain type of way. When now in 2025, that is just not the case at all. But I think it's a good thing because just because of somebody's outward appearance doesn't mean that you can judge who they are on the inside. Another reason I feel like Gen Z has ultimately rejected street culture is because it's just not worth it. I think with social media, we have more access to information more than ever, which can be a good or a bad thing. But in this way, I think it's proved to be positive. A lot of us have become fans of certain people, and we have seen the life they live ultimately be their demise, or be a great source of pain and trauma. One of the biggest examples of this I can think is the beef between Yungeen Ace and Foolio. During that time beefing, a lot of people liked their music, mostly because of the shock factor. But we got to see over the years how these stories really end. Think about Foolio, he's now unfortunately unalived, RIP. Queso has just been found guilty of murder. And I think Yungeen Ace is the only one who's still really kicking, but he didn't get away unscathed either. If you didn't know, Yungeen Ace got shot like 9 times and he saw his brother, his cousin, and like his best friend all get unalived in front of him. And this is just a celebrity example of this happening, but people who live this type of lifestyle see stuff like this happen all the time. Honestly, I don't think I know anybody who's tried to live that type of lifestyle and hasn't been arrested, hasn't been unalived, or somebody close to them hasn't been unalived. That is such a hard mindset to have. And if you ever listen to an interview from people who are living like this, they will always tell you that they always have to look over their shoulder. I can't get caught slipping is a popular term a lot of them say. But if you really think about that, a life like that is never good. I recently read the autobiography of Frederick Douglass. And to give you a little backstory, if you don't know who that is, he escaped captivity and pretty much worked as an abolitionist and revolutionary for the rest of his life. But something that he talked about in the book that was in the back of his head was the fact that he could always get caught and brought back to captivity. I actually facilitated the discussion of this in my class, and one of the questions that I asked was, do you think Frederick Douglass was ever really free? To which most of my class said no. It kind of draws a parallel here, and I actually mentioned that in our discussion, that if you live a life where you're always worried about something going wrong or somebody coming to get you at any time, you're never really living. And obviously Frederick Douglass's case was different because that was as a result of the way America was back then. To be honest, to a certain extent, I understand everybody's situation is different. You know, desperate people do desperate things. But living like this is ultimately a choice. There's so much information and resources out nowadays to allow people to become successful if they come from a place that's more unfortunate. But they may not know about that if they don't deem it as possible. I actually also wrote a paper about this in psychology. There's a very low likelihood that somebody will pursue something if they don't even deem it as something they can realistically do. Obviously, even with things like going to college, colleges offer things like Pell Grants, there's TOPS, scholarships, all things that can help you out and make the financial burden of college a lot easier. And sometimes can even give you the tools to be put in a different position. I know somebody who went to college came from a less fortunate background, and because of Pell Grants, scholarships, and all the things, they were able to get a $10,000 refund back every semester, which obviously made them not want for much. They were able to get a car off of it, and it just helped them a lot. But all of that came from information, knowing what to apply for, and just having their head on straight and pursuing something. And this person wasn't a prodigy. They weren't the next Einstein. They were just somebody who put their mind to something. The second reason I think that we have rejected the streets is because it's hard. But yeah, I don't know if you know, but it's actually really hard to be a criminal. This is something I tried to touch upon in my Street Smart versus versus book smart video, which is the fact that if you're smart enough to be a criminal, 9 times out of 10, you're smart enough to study a book. Because if you're a good one that doesn't get caught, the average person cannot do that. Especially nowadays, there's so much technology, cameras, they tracking your phone, they tracking your messages. Like, it's really, really hard nowadays not to get caught. And if you really think about it, if you mess up at your regular job for the people who are working, you might get reprimanded. If it's bad enough, you might lose your job and have to look for another one. If you mess up as a criminal, you might get robbed, you might get sent to jail, or you might get unalived. And I think with it being easier than ever to catch people, I think a lot of people just don't think the risk is worth the reward. Because even if you ran up $1 million doing illegal stuff, if you get sent to jail for 40 years, does it really matter? Some people might say yes. The majority obviously says no. I'm inclined to agree with the majority. To wrap up my opinions on this, I really don't think this is a bad thing. I think with more and more people rejecting it, we'll see more people turn into different and legal ways to make it out of their situations, which I think can lead us as a whole society to a better place. I know in theory, it's easier said than done for somebody in a desperate situation to not resort to certain things. And if that is truly your situation, trust me, I do feel for you. And I hope your circumstances eventually change. Anyway, that's pretty much all I gotta say about that. Leave a like, comment how you feel about this situation, how you feel about the tides turning. Anyway, thank you for tuning in today. One thing before you go.
Bye.